The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the hum of an engine slowing on the deserted highway. A battered car door swung open, and Max, a loyal puppy, was shoved into the cold road. His paws scrambled against rough asphalt as the taillights disappeared into the dark. Fear rose in his chest as he barked desperately, his voice drowned by the rushing wind of passing cars. The bitter air stung his nose, and his heart raced with confusion. He whined softly, not understanding why the one he trusted most had turned cruel. His eyes glistened in the dim glow of a flickering streetlight, filled with pain and hope. Alone, trembling and abandoned, Max stood frozen as the shadows grew larger. He whispered with his gaze, "Don't leave me." Yet, the world remained indifferent, the silence pressing heavier, and for the first time, the road stretched endless before him. The night pressed down heavier as Max whimpered, his small body shivering in the cold. The silence was broken by the distant roar of trucks, indifferent giants passing by. Each light flashing across his fur seemed like hope, but none slowed down. Hunger gnawed at his belly, yet fear rooted him still. He thought of warm hands once held close to him, now gone. He barked weakly, his voice swallowed by the night. His scar burned as though it remembered betrayal. Shadows stretched long and twisted, whispering loneliness. His heart beat faster, torn between running into darkness or waiting where love had vanished. He lowered his head, his breath sharp and ragged, eyes searching for something, someone, to save him. Wind swept across the highway, carrying the bitter scent of oil and dust. Max's ears twitched at every passing echo, each sound magnified in his loneliness. He tried to move forward, but his paws faltered, as if chained by invisible fear. A deep growl from the shadows startled him, his heart hammering in his chest. He turned swiftly, expecting another cruel hand. But there was nothing, only emptiness. He barked, his voice cracking, but no one came. His small body trembled as he pressed against the guardrail, searching the night for comfort. The world loomed enormous, every shadow a threat. Yet his eyes still flickered with hope, fragile but unbroken. Max's stomach growled, the ache sharp as hunger consumed him. He sniffed along the cracked road, searching for scraps, but the air held nothing but dust. He whimpered, pawing at the empty ground, his energy fading. A rustling sound from the bushes startled him, his fur bristling as he froze. His ears perked, eyes darting nervously. He barked softly, a plea hidden in the sound. The silence answered cruelly, leaving him weaker. His legs wobbled, barely holding him upright. His eyes dimmed, yet inside him, a stubborn flicker burned. Survival was all he knew now, though betrayal lingered heavy in every step. A sudden howl pierced the air, chilling Max to the core. His fur stood on end as shadows stirred in the distance. From the darkness, glowing eyes appeared, predatory and relentless. Max whimpered, backing against the guardrail, his legs shaking. The growl grew louder, closer, filling the silence with menace. His heart raced, yet he stood, trembling, refusing to collapse. He barked weakly, a desperate cry to fend off the threat. The night thickened, the danger unmistakable. Alone, betrayed and vulnerable, Max faced the looming terror. The road stretched behind him, salvation nowhere to be found, only darkness and teeth waiting ahead. The highway quieted, as dawn hinted at the horizon, painting the sky with pale grays. Max shivered, his eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet he refused to give in. He whimpered softly, a sound more like a question than a cry. Memories stirred of gentle hands that once scratched behind his ears, and he longed for warmth that was gone. His heart carried a fragile hope that someone would see him as more than a shadow. He pressed his nose against the cold guardrail, imagining comfort that was no longer there. His body trembled, but his spirit whispered, "Not yet." Even in betrayal, loyalty burned inside him. As the sun stretched higher, Max wandered unsteadily along the cracked road. His paws ached, but he pressed forward, drawn by the faint scent of life. He remembered a yard once filled with laughter, grass under his paws, and food in a silver bowl. The echo of his name, once called with love, now haunted him. He barked once, a fragile sound, as if testing whether the world would answer. But the silence pressed heavier. He lowered his head, determined to keep walking despite the ache. The road was endless, but somewhere within him, a fragile ember of hope glowed stubbornly. The hours grew heavy, and hunger clawed deeper into Max's body. His ribs pressed faintly through his coat, but his eyes still scanned the world. He pressed his nose to the ground, searching for scraps, but only dust filled his senses. He paused, lifting his head as the wind carried a faint sound of mewing. His ears perked, curiosity breaking through fear. He turned sharply, following the fragile cry, each step hesitant but determined. He barked once, softly, as though asking permission to come closer. In that moment, loneliness shifted into something new, possibility. His tail twitched with cautious hope. From the shadows of an alley, a pair of wary eyes glistened. A small cat emerged, her body frail, but her stance defiant. Luna hissed softly, arching her back, yet her eyes betrayed fear. Max froze, lowering his body to appear smaller, his tail wagging timidly. He barked gently, not as a threat but as a greeting. Luna's fur bristled, though she didn't retreat. Their eyes locked, two abandoned souls reading each other's pain. The silence held heavy tension, yet beneath it lay recognition. Each knew loneliness too well. In that fragile moment, mistrust and curiosity danced between them. The alley smelled of rust and damp stone as Max and Luna held their ground. Luna hissed again, her thin frame trembling, but her paws did not retreat. Max barked softly, lowering his head as if offering peace. His eyes begged for understanding, his body shivering but unmoving. Luna's ears twitched, her gaze sharp, yet she saw no cruelty in him. She mewed faintly, a sound more fragile than fierce. The air shifted as their shared pain bridged the distance. Both had been broken by betrayal, yet in that silence, a seed of something new stirred: companionship. Max wandered closer to the village, tail low, eyes wide with both fear and longing. He barked softly at passing figures, but each one turned away. A boy threw a stone, shouting at him to leave, and Max yelped, his paws skidding against the dirt. Luna hissed from the shadows, her fur bristling, warning him to retreat. Yet Max's eyes clung to the hope that someone might see him differently. His stomach growled, louder than his voice, forcing him forward. He pawed gently at a doorstep, but the door slammed shut. Betrayal pressed heavier, but he refused to stop believing. Max staggered back toward the alley, where Luna sat watching, her eyes narrowed. She hissed, "You should not trust them." Her voice was unspoken, yet Max understood. She paced in front of him, her tail flicking sharply with warning. Max lowered his head, ears drooping, but his gaze still lingered on the world beyond the alley. Luna's stance was fierce, her body thin, but her spirit unbroken. "Humans hurt," her eyes seemed to say. Max whined softly, torn between fear and the fragile dream of belonging. The silence stretched heavy, and the choice between trust and survival hung over him. The hunger grew unbearable, forcing Max and Luna into dangerous ground. "Allah!" The scent of discarded food drifted from a trash bin near the market. Max stepped forward eagerly, his paws trembling, while Luna stalked behind him, cautious yet desperate. Max leapt for a scrap, but a loud crash startled them both. A vendor spotted them and shouted angrily, swinging a stick. Max yelped, his ears pinned back as he scrambled away. Luna hissed fiercely, swiping the air, but she too retreated. Their breaths came fast, hearts pounding with the sting of cruelty. Even survival seemed forbidden in this world. As the sky darkened, a figure emerged from the shadows. The abusive man stepped forward, his cold eyes narrowing as he recognized Max. "So you survived?" His presence seemed to sneer. Max froze, heart hammering, tail pressed tight against his belly. Luna growled low, her stance firm despite her smaller size. The man reached for a stone, raising it as though to strike. Max barked, not in defiance but in sheer terror, echoing through the alley. Luna leapt, claws flashing, forcing him to hesitate. Their combined desperation held him at bay, but the danger grew heavier with each breath. Max and Luna darted into the maze of streets, their paws and claws striking the ground in frantic rhythm. Shouts echoed behind them, but they pressed on, weaving through shadows. Max stumbled, his body trembling with fear, yet Luna urged him forward with sharp mews. They turned corners blindly, the scent of smoke and stone overwhelming them. For a fleeting moment, Max glanced at Luna, their eyes meeting in shared resolve. The world hunted them, but together they ran faster than fear itself. The night swallowed them, leaving only the sound of their desperate escape behind. The night grew quieter after their frantic escape. Max collapsed near the edge of an abandoned yard, his chest heaving with exhaustion. Luna circled him warily, her tail twitching with unease. She studied him, her eyes sharp yet filled with reluctant sympathy. Finally, she stepped closer, her voice carried in silence. "I was abandoned too." Her green eyes glistened as though reflecting memories she could not hide. Max lifted his head, ears perked, sensing her pain. The walls of distrust between them trembled. Their shared scars whispered louder than their fear. Loneliness was no longer theirs to bear alone. Luna stretched her paw, revealing a faint scar along her side, her fur parting to show the cruel mark. Max sniffed gently, his eyes soft with recognition. She hissed low, but it wasn't anger, it was memory. "Humans hurt me too," her silence seemed to echo. Max whined, lowering his body in shared sorrow. For the first time, Luna allowed his presence without defiance. The night wrapped them in stillness, as if the world itself paused to acknowledge their fragile bond. Pain was carved into them both, but together, it became a story of survival instead of despair. As dawn crept over the rooftops, a figure appeared across the street. The compassionate woman, weary yet kind, paused when she saw them. Her eyes softened, though her hands carried the fatigue of endless rescue work. She crouched, whispering gently, "Hey, it's okay." Max barked once, torn between fear and longing. Luna hissed, body stiff, unwilling to trust so easily. The woman extended her hand, not touching, only waiting. Her presence carried warmth that pierced through the cold air. For the first time, the alley did not feel like a cage, but a place where change could begin. A sudden noise startled them, a rusted can clattering in the street. Max leapt instinctively, placing himself between Luna and the sound. His body trembled, but his stance was firm, his bark sharp with defiance. Luna blinked, surprised by his courage. For the first time, she did not see him as helpless, but as a protector. The compassionate woman watched silently, her eyes wide, recognizing the spark of loyalty still burning within him. Max's scarred ear twitched, but his gaze remained fixed forward. Betrayed once, he now discovered a strength that came not from fear, but from love unspoken. As the sun climbed higher, light spilled across Max's fur, revealing what had once been hidden. Around his neck hung a faint mark of fur pressed thin, the ghost of a collar long gone. The compassionate woman's breath caught as she whispered, "He belonged to someone." Max tilted his head, confused by her tone. Luna's gaze sharpened, as though understanding more than words. This revelation changed everything. Max had once been loved, yet discarded. Betrayal was deeper than hunger or cold. But in that truth lay a possibility. If he could be loved once, he could be loved again. The sun slipped low, casting long shadows across the broken street. Max and Luna followed the compassionate woman, but danger lingered behind. The abusive man appeared once more, his steps heavy, his glare fixed. "There you are," his voice cracked like venom. Max barked, body trembling, yet he stood firm. Luna hissed, fur bristling, refusing to flee this time. The man raised his arm, stone clenched in his hand, the cruel past threatening to return. The woman shouted, "Stop," but her voice trembled. The world froze in that heartbeat, every soul caught between fear and defiance. From a corner of the alley, an older dog emerged, his steps slow but steady. His fur was grayed, his eyes heavy with wisdom and time. This was Bruno, the stray mentor who had survived it all. He barked once, deep and commanding, his voice silencing even the abusive man's sneer. Max's ears perked, eyes wide, as though seeing the strength he longed for. Bruno stood tall, his scarred frame trembling but unyielding. The world seemed to pause as the elder faced cruelty with dignity. Luna lowered her body beside Max, and for the first time, they were not alone. The abusive man snarled, stepping forward, but Bruno lunged, his bark echoing like thunder. Max barked too, a higher pitch but filled with raw defiance. Luna arched, claws flashing, her hiss slicing through the night. The man swung his arm, the stone flying, but it struck the wall instead. The compassionate woman rushed forward, shouting, "Leave them!" Her voice cracked with anger and fear, but she did not stop. For the first time, cruelty faltered against unity. Max's paws pressed firmly against the ground, his body no longer trembling. The choice was clear. He would not run anymore. Max stood before the Alaric, tail stiff, eyes blazing with courage. He barked again, louder, stronger, the sound cutting through the evening air. His scarred ear twitched, but his spirit no longer bowed. Luna mewed sharply, her small frame pressed against his side. Bruno growled low, his body a shield though age weighed heavily. The abusive man scowled, stepping back under the weight of their defiance. The compassionate woman's voice rose with strength. "He is not yours anymore." Max's chest heaved, but his paws did not move. For the first time, he had chosen to fight for love. The standoff cracked as the abusive man cursed, retreating into the shadows. His footsteps faded, leaving silence heavy in the air. Max stood tall, though his body trembled with exhaustion. Luna pressed against him, her eyes softer than before. Bruno lowered himself slowly, his strength fading but his gaze proud. The compassionate woman knelt, arms open, her eyes filled with tears. "You're safe now," she whispered. Max took a hesitant step forward, then another, his tail wagging weakly. Betrayal had scarred him, but trust had found a way to return. The battle was over, but the journey had only begun. The night's terror gave way to dawn's soft light. Max lay curled against Luna, their breaths rising and falling together. The compassionate woman watched quietly, her heart aching at their scars yet warmed by their bond. Bruno rested nearby, his weary eyes closing, a guardian finally at peace. The alley that once echoed with fear now felt gentler, touched by golden light. Max whimpered softly, pressing closer to Luna, who purred faintly for the first time. The silence was no longer cruel, it was healing. Survival had turned into belonging, fragile but real. A new chapter had begun. Later that day, the compassionate woman offered food from her worn satchel. Max hesitated, sniffing carefully, his scarred ear twitching. Luna stepped forward first, her hunger outweighing mistrust. She nibbled gently, her eyes never leaving the woman's. Max whined, torn, but finally leaned forward, his tongue brushing the food with trembling resolve. The woman smiled softly, whispering, "Good boy." Max's tail wagged weakly, his heart racing with a feeling unfamiliar yet warm. The wall of betrayal began to crack. Luna mewed softly, nudging Max as though to say, "It's safe." In that moment, survival turned into fragile trust. Max began to follow the compassionate woman wherever she went, though his steps were cautious. Luna shadowed them both, never straying too far. The woman carried them toward her home, her arms cradling supplies, her eyes glancing back to be sure they still followed. Max barked softly, his voice uncertain but hopeful. Luna meowed low, her sound like agreement. Together they walked through streets once filled with cruelty, now touched by a fragile promise. For the first time, their journey wasn't just survival, it was a path towards something brighter. The sun shone warmer, as though blessing the bond forming. At the threshold of her small home, the compassionate woman paused, her hand resting on the worn wooden door. She looked back at Max and Luna, her eyes questioning. Max whined softly, stepping forward with his ears raised. Luna halted, her body tense, but Max brushed against her, urging her onward. The woman knelt, whispering gently, "You belong here now." Max wagged his tail, his paws scratching against the floor as he pressed closer. Luna's gaze softened, her body finally lowering into trust. For the first time, the word home seemed possible, not just a memory. Inside, the air was warmer than the streets, carrying the scent of safety. Bruno settled at the corner, his tired body sinking into soft cloth. Max bounded clumsily toward a rug, his tail wagging in short bursts. Luna leapt to a windowsill, her eyes scanning but no longer sharp with fear. The compassionate woman closed the door gently, tears glistening as she whispered, "You're safe." Max looked around, his heart pounding with disbelief. The scars of betrayal remained, yet for the first time, love touched them again. In the quiet of that home, survival transformed into healing. The morning sun spilled across the small home, filling every corner with golden warmth. Max stretched on the rug, his tail thumping against the floor in slow, steady rhythm. Luna yawned from her perch, her eyes soft with quiet peace. The compassionate woman sat nearby, her hands resting gently in her lap, watching them with a smile that carried both sorrow and joy. Bruno dozed in the corner, his breaths calm, his spirit finally at rest. Max barked once, softly, as if to say, "Thank you." The silence was no longer cruel. It was home. Outside, children's laughter echoed faintly from the street, a sound that once reminded Max of loss, but now felt different. He lifted his head, ears twitching, and wagged his tail. Luna jumped down from the sill, brushing against his side, her trust finally whole. Compassionate woman's eyes glistened, whispering, "You're safe here." Max pressed his nose into her palm, trembling with a joy he never thought possible. Luna meowed softly, as if echoing the words. The scars of abandonment remained etched in their bodies, but love had found them again, and it would never leave. The days of hunger and fear seemed distant, as Max curled beside Luna near the hearth. Their breaths rose and fell together, harmony where once there was despair. The compassionate woman placed a blanket gently around them, her tears silent but radiant. Bruno lifted his head, watching with tired eyes, before resting again with a sigh of contentment. For the first time, Max's dreams were not haunted by betrayal, but filled with warmth. He twitched in sleep, paws moving as though running freely across fields that stretched beyond fear. Beside him, Luna purred, their bond sealed in peace. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Max and Luna sat together at the open window. The sky blazed with colors of fire and rose, painting their faces with light. Max leaned gently into Luna, his eyes wide with wonder. Luna's tail wrapped softly around him, her purr steady. The compassionate woman watched silently from the shadows, her heart swelling with pride. What began in betrayal had ended in belonging. Their scars remained, but they no longer defined them. Instead, they stood as proof that even in the cruelest world, love could still be found and cherished. The night settled, stars scattering across the sky, and silence blanketed the home. Max curled on the rug, Luna pressed against him, their bodies rising and falling in unison. Compassionate woman whispered softly, "You're loved," her voice breaking with emotion. Bruno exhaled one final sigh, his old body sinking into peace, his spirit watching over them. The world outside remained vast and cruel, but here, love endured. Max's eyes closed, his last waking thought a whisper of gratitude. Luna purred in the stillness. Together they had found true friendship, and in that bond, they were forever safe.